We know what he did. We now know his name. The man on the stretcher, the man who launched his own attack on democracy yesterday, was Khalid Masood. He'd been living in the West Midlands, where he hired the car he used as a lethal weapon. He was born in Kent, but so-called Islamic State say he'd become one of their soldiers. Today, because of his actions, flags were flying at half-mast over Parliament, while side by side a painstaking investigation into an act of terror was being conducted, as the workings of the democracy he'd come to hate were continuing. The Prime Minister left Downing Street, heading for the Commons, in a show of business as usual. It was important that Khalid Masood should be denied the small victory of causing further disruption. Which is why the normal ceremony of the Speaker's procession into the chamber went ahead, as always. Even though this day's business would start with a minute's silence for the fallen. Observed in Parliament and outside it. Before this message of defiance to those who would threaten our way of life.
We are not afraid, and our resolve will never waver in the face of terrorism.
Theresa May then paid a moving tribute to Keith Palmer, the police officer stabbed to death protecting this house.
PC Palmer had devoted his life to the service of his country. He had been a member of the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command for 15 years, and a soldier in the Royal Artillery before that. He was a husband and a father, killed doing a job he loved. He was every inch a hero, and his actions will never be forgotten.
Yeah. Despite the desperate efforts of medics and colleagues, PC Keith Palmer died from multiple stab wounds. Today his grieving family issued a statement saying, "Keith will be remembered as a wonderful dad and husband, a loving son, brother and uncle, a friend to everyone who knew him. He will be deeply missed. We love him so much."
There has been a huge and deliberate effort to reflect life as normal here, an impression that's been supported by the reopening of the bridge that was the scene of carnage yesterday. But it can, of course, only go so far. For some, everything changed yesterday. For their families, life will never be the same again.
Aisha Frada, a 43-year-old who worked at a school in London, and Kurt Cochran, a 54-year-old American tourist, have been named as the two pedestrians knocked down and killed yesterday. 7 others who were injured by the terrorist car as it crossed Westminster Bridge are still said to be in critical condition. They include a Romanian woman seen in this footage falling into the Thames as she tried to avoid the vehicle. Last night, police raided properties in London, Wales and here in Birmingham. An operation that has continued through today. 8 people have been arrested as detectives try to establish whether Khalid had any accomplices, though the attack appears to have been carried out alone.
It is still our belief, which continues to be borne out by our investigation, that this attacker acted alone and was inspired by international terrorism. To be explicit, at this stage, we have no specific information about further threats to the public.
Late this afternoon, officers took brief time out to honour one of their own, before returning to the business of determining whether this particular threat died with Khalid Masood, or whether there are other threats out there. Paul Davis, ITV News.